Shalom, family. This is Yuda. Today's lesson, Ezra and the three-headed eagle prophecy. I want to give props to Sister Houston for putting me on this trail. And boy, was it a good one. You know, I want to tell y'all, there's a lot of YouTube teachers, if you can really call them that, over the past 8, 9, maybe 10 years. I've noticed quite a few that has said these books are pseudepigrapha. Now, I don't know if you understand what pseudepigrapha is, but let me give you a brief description. Pseudepigrapha are claimed to be the works that are falsely attributed to an author, or where the true author attributes the work to someone else. The term comes from the Greek word pseudepigrapha, which means falsely inscribed. I was one of those people that was snatched up from listening to these people years ago until I understood the only way that I was going to understand what the truth is, where the truth is to dig for myself. So I got out of the habit of listening to everybody and taking everybody's word because they sound good. Just like everything that shines ain't gold. Everything that you hear that sounds good is not always good. If these people would take the time out, obviously they have not done this, and really look at these books, they wouldn't make those claims. And like I said, there was a time when I did it too. That was pure ignorance. But when we get older, we're supposed to become wiser. Now, sometimes that takes a lot of hard work, study, diligence, which is something most of these so-called teachers haven't done. They haven't done their due diligence. Ezra, or Esdras, is not pseudepigrapha. But what would you expect to hear from your enemy? What would you expect for the very people that hid the books, the legitimate, authentic books, in order to keep you in the dark? What would you expect for them to tell you? So I got a list of books here. Well, it's just a short list, but I just want to put you guys on the trail that I got on years ago. These are books that were taken out, taken away from us, hidden from us. Why? So we would never know the truth. Remember, these people are your enemy. Your enemy is not going to tell you the truth. But here's the list of books, just a short list. The Ascension of Isaiah, the Assumption of Moses, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Greek Apocalypse of Baruch, Letters of Aristeas, 3 and 4 Maccabees, Psalms of Solomon, Secret of Enoch, the Book of the Giants, which is also Enoch, and there's more. There is more. But this is what the enemy does, people. They thought ahead millennia ago. This is not a new plan. This has been going on for thousands of years. And we're just now beginning to open our eyes and see. And still, there's many of our people that are stuck in that cycle. They just can't get out. So I decided to investigate Ezra and the three-headed eagle prophecy. Now, if what I bring to you today don't convince you that this book is authentic, there is no hope for you. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to be in any hurry. And some of you, or most of you, may have to listen to this several times, because there are some things that I really would like to say, but y'all know YouTube, heavily censored. So I'm counting on you to study. Don't ask anybody unless you absolutely have to. But study and pay attention to the words. Look them up. I recommend you look the words up. Make sure you get a good understanding. The scriptures even tell you, in all your getting, get a good understanding. So I'm going to bring this to you today, and I want to thank Sister Houston one more time for putting me on the trail. This rabbit hole is a lot deeper than what I'm bringing, but like I said, YouTube is heavily censored. So you guys are going to have to learn how to read between the lines. Listen carefully. Don't be distracted. Get your book. Get your book and follow me where you can. Let's begin. Ezra and the three-headed eagle prophecy. What does it mean? With the identification of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as the second president in this series, it's a simple matter to determine how this group of 14 U.S. presidents compare to Ezra's prophecy. This is juicy. So I really need for everybody to pay close attention. I'm going to not only open your eyes to today's event, but I'm going to show you 2,600 years ago, Ezra hit the nail on the head. Before there was any such thing as a president or the United States of America. It is a simple matter to determine how this group of 14 U.S. presidents compare to Ezra's prophecy. The results are truly amazing. I have a chart below that lists these 14 presidents by name. Now, like I said, y'all, pay close attention. This is going to blow your mind. Their administrations agree perfectly to the strict requirements of Ezra's vision. I believe that this perfect correlation with Ezra's vision cannot be coincidental. I would even go as far to say it's impossible. This book, Ezra, let me tell y'all something. There is two books out of all the other books, not saying that all the other books are not important, but these two books today, dealing with today, right now is where you should be. And that's Ezra, all of Ezra, and Baruch. If y'all want to understand what's happening now, today, if y'all want to understand what brought this war on between Russia and Ukraine, if y'all want to understand where we are going, where we've been, and why, you need to read these two books. The two books that most of these YouTube teachers say are non-canonical. In other words, pseudepigrapha. So here's my chart. I want y'all to pay close attention because I can only say so much, but I do believe you will get the message. The first president, Herbert Hoover, on this list. Now, this has nothing to do with George Washington, Andrew, Harrison, or any of the rest. Excuse me. These presidents that I have on this list are key to today's events. Herbert Hoover, 1929, he served one term. I'm going to explain to you why I have this list and what it means. Number 2, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He served 4 terms. This is very important. Roosevelt served 4 terms. Harry S. Truman served 1 term. Dwight D. Eisenhower, he served 2 terms. Now, y'all keep in mind, the normal time that a president is allotted to serve is 2 complete 4-year terms. Make a note. John F. Kennedy. Now, these 2 that I'm about to mention now are highlighted. You will understand why in a few minutes. John F. Kennedy served 1, and he didn't get to finish. I'll explain why in a minute. Lyndon B. Johnson, he served 1 term. He bowed out. That's another story for another day. Richard M. Nixon, he served 2 terms, and he was out in an unnatural situation, just like Kennedy. Not exactly the same, but it was unnatural. Gerald R. Ford served 1 term. Jimmy Carter, he served 1 term. Ronald Reagan, 2 terms. George Herbert Walker Bush, he served 1 term. Bill Clinton served 2 terms. George Herbert Walker Bush's son, George W. Bush, he served 2. Excuse me. And the last on the list is Barack Obama. He served 2 terms. Why am I telling you this? The angel in Ezra said that after the second little feathers administration was cut short, we would be nearing the approximate midpoint of the timetable. Now, I don't know if y'all noticed. Let me just show you. Up here to the right is the timetable. Let me give you a better view. We have the order in which they served, the name of the presidents. We have the terms, the short, the time, and the date. That's in this order: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, again, the angel said that after the second little feathers administration was cut short, we would be nearing the approximate midpoint of the timetable. Now, given this list of consecutive U.S. presidents, the 2 little feathers are readily discernible as John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. That's the reason I had those 2, let me show you, highlighted. If you notice, I have these 2 highlighted: John F. Kennedy and Richard M. Nixon. I'm going to break this open for you. You're going to see. But that's the reason I highlighted those 2. These 2 were the only presidents in the sequence to have been removed from office due to unnatural, contrary events. Now, to illustrate this midpoint, I've made Nixon's line red, as y'all noticed. You will notice the far right column of this chart is titled Time. From the beginning of President Hoover's administration to the end of Nixon's was 45 years. This is good. This is going to explain what you are seeing today. People, get the hell out of Babylon. That window is closing. And if you can't get out, you make sure that you got your I's dotted and your T's crossed when it comes to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Creator. Make sure, because all hell is about to break loose. From the beginning of President Hoover's administration to the end of Nixon's was 45 years. As the angel said, Nixon was approaching the midpoint. We should have a little more than 45 years remaining after him to the conclusion, after Nixon. The timer column shows the calculation of time remaining, and I did my best. I might be off a day or two, or give or take a little, but the timer column shows the calculation of time remaining based upon this assumption. You can see the amazing similarities between this chart and the events predicted by Ezra's vision some 2,600 years ago. Despite having 22 presidential elections during this period, only 14 men was elected. The second of which was elected to twice, listen close, this is where I need y'all to pay real close attention. The second of which was elected to twice as many terms as any other, all of them included. Let me read that again. The second of which was elected to twice as many terms as any other. And term limits after that were implemented before the end of his last term. Only two presidents in this series had their administrations cut short by unnatural causes, the last of which occurred halfway through the list. No other nation that I have come across in my research aligns as perfectly or even remotely close to what I just told you. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. I did my work. Look it up. Now, I want to highlight how significant this is. Consider this illustration. Now, listen, I'm going to give you an example. Since the founding of the United States, up to the point described in this timeline, Americans had voted for presidents 57 different times. As a result of those 57 elections, there were 43 presidents. Now, for illustration purposes only, assume that I had two identical bags of 57 jelly beans. This is the best I could come up with. Assume each bean represents the results of a presidential election. Assume that I selected 22 jelly beans from my bag and laid them out in a row and covered them so that you could not see them. Nor did I explain what the jelly beans represented. What would be the likelihood that someone else would be able to randomly match my pattern of 22 jelly beans in a perfect order? The answer is 3.9 undecillion. I know most of you never heard of that. This number is so large that you have probably never heard of it. It's 39 with 35 zeros after it. It's more than double the number of grains of sand on planet Earth. Your odds of winning the lottery is over a quadrillion times greater than this. Yet, amazingly, Ezra's vision placed these presidential jelly beans in their perfect, proper order over 2,000 years ago, before the founding of the United States. Furthermore, he did so using an eagle, the basis for both the national emblem and the presidential seal of the United States of America. I hope that this gives you cause to pause and consider these implications. This is the reason I'm telling you, you're going to have to listen to this maybe 3 or 4 times and pay very close attention, maybe even more. But this is very important. For this reason and others, I'm convinced that Ezra's vision pertains to America and is being fulfilled right before our eyes. And these fake, false teachers want to call this book pseudepigraphy. Not only this, but this vision appears to be counting down to a major event that will take place in our day. That means very soon. If y'all are paying attention to all the things that's going on around today, this is going to make perfect sense in every sense of the word. This vision is counting down to a major event that's going to take place in our day. Now, President Obama was the last president in this series. Like I said, we're not talking about Washington or any other presidents before or after. We're talking about these key presidents because they are the one this prophecy was talking about. Obama was the last president in this series. There are 4. The events Ezra sees next will happen to President Trump. Yes, in spite of all the crap that this man's been put through. I ain't saying he's good or bad. I ain't saying I'm supporting him. I'm simply saying these events that Ezra sees next will happen to President Trump. Watch my word. Watch. The visions continues. Then saw I also that 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6 and remained under the eagle, the head that was upon the right side. For the 4 little feathers continued in their place. 2 Ezra chapter 11, verse 24. I hope y'all got your books. Get your books and your dictionaries. You're going to need them for this one. Now Ezra saw that 2 of the 6 little feathers on the right side of the eagle would break away and align themselves with the head of the eagle. This symbolism is obviously significant, very significant. Please pay attention. Thankfully, the angel provided an explanation as to what this symbolism meant. And as he spoke to Ezra, he said, "And whereas thou saw the 8 small under feathers sticking to her wings, this is the interpretation, that in him, the eagle that is, there shall arise 8 kings. There shall arise 8 kings, whose time shall be put small." Y'all will figure this out. "And their years swift." They go by very quickly. "And 2 of them shall perish." I wonder what 2 could that have been? "The middle time approaching, 4 shall be kept until their end begin to approach. But 2 shall be kept unto the end." 2 Ezra chapter 12, verse 19 to 21. Now from this explanation, we learn that just as 2 of the 8 little feathers would administer towards the middle of the timeline, 4 would administer near the end of it, and 2 would be reserved until the very end. By the end, we are to understand the end of the premillennial world as we know it. These two little feathers commence their joint ministrations after the end of the consecutive reign of the three heads of the eagle. The identity of these last two feathers will become clearer through the remainder of the book of Ezra. The vision now turns to the administration of President Trump to succeed President Obama, and he did. We on track, y'all. Stay with me. And the angel said, I beheld, and lo, Ezra said, and I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the twig thought to set up themselves and to have a rule. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And the second was sooner away than the first. Second Ezra, chapter 11, verse 25 to 27. Look these up. If you don't have a Sefer Bible, if you don't have the Septuagint, use Google. But be careful when you use Google. But you got to find these answers. They are here. I have dropped a lot of breadcrumbs. All you got to do is pick them up. Now, according to Ezra, President Trump will be set up, but his administration will be cut short by contrary and unnatural means like that of JFK or Richard Nixon. True to the vision, the presidency of Donald Trump has been under attack since the night he won the 2016 election. If y'all been watching the political arena, y'all know this. I'm going to give you some examples of just how Trump was attacked. And by the way, when I just told you that his administration was cut off by contrary and unnatural means, remember he got impeached. Remember that, because this is all going to make sense. Now, according to Ezra, President Trump will be set up, but his administration will be cut short. He got impeached by contrary and unnatural means, like that of JFK or Richard Nixon. True to the vision, the presidency of Donald Trump has been under attack since the night he won the 2016 election. Y'all have seen them all. Y'all have seen what the media has done. You've seen what the Congress have done. You've seen what all the deep state has done, especially the Democrats. They don't want that man in that office. They have tried 3 assassination attempts, and it's not over. So let's look at some of the attacks. Agenda-driven coverage. We're talking about the media, y'all, the mainstream media. According to the 2 multiple studies, President Trump's press coverage has been over 90% negative. That is a key statement. Please remember this. 90% of his press coverage is at 90% negative. Now keep this in mind. According to the Pew Research Center, President Obama's new coverage was only 20% negative. And do y'all remember all the crap that was going on during his term? And yet he only got 20% negative. With President Bush and Clinton's coverage both coming in at 28% negative. We all know that 9/11 was an inside job. How many people don't believe that that was done as the way it was claimed? Anybody with a little bit of common sense would be able to follow the paper trail, follow the money. But for some reason, we are meant to hate this president, Trump. Is it working? Is it really turning people against Trump? All this negative coverage? That's the whole purpose of mainstream media, to paint an ugly picture. Whenever they want to get rid of somebody, they give them negative reports. And people are so habitual. When they hear a certain thing multiple times, even if they start out knowing it's a lie, eventually they'll believe it. Next, seditious actions and subordinates. In an unheard of display of insubordination, Trump's White House has been plagued with covert enemies that have leaked sensitive information, opposed the president's agenda, and promoted an intentional look and feel of chaos and dysfunction within his administration. People, that was an attack on that man's credibility simply because they don't want him in that office. Now, like I said earlier, I ain't voting for nobody. I have nothing to do with none of them. As far as I'm concerned, ain't none of them no good. But these are facts. We're dealing with facts today. And they're coming from the book of Ezra. Y'all teachers out there that say pseudepigraphy, y'all need to do y'all's due diligence. Trump's White House has been plagued with covert enemies that have leaked sensitive information, opposed the president's agenda, and promoted an intentional look and feel of chaos and dysfunction within his administration. Indeed, we have learned that both the FBI and CIA colluded, look that word up, colluded to formulate multiple insurance plans to ensure that President Trump would not remain in office long. And they got him out. Now, had this occurred in any other administration, people would have been arrested for treason. Y'all better hear me. This is going on right up under your nose. Don't stick your head in the sand like an ostrich. Your problems will not go away just because you can't see them. Get your head out of the sand. Pay attention. Fabrication of the Russian collusion narrative. Y'all remember that. Y'all remember that. They tried to say that Trump colluded with Russia. That's how he got elected. You know, all this. The infamous and fallacious Seal dossier was created and promoted by defunct intelligence sources as political weapons to eliminate President Trump. The document has direct ties, listen, to Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee, who combined paid more than $7 million and legal and research fees for its creation. Unlawful surveillance by the previous administration. This was Obama. I remember this. The Obama administration used the fallacious Steele dossier, knowing that it was unverified, to obtain illegal visa warrants to spy on the campaign of President Trump. He knew better, but did that stop him? He didn't. Did he get punished? No, he didn't. Why? Because they were all in it together. They tried to stop him from getting in, and when he got in, they tried to get him out. And now that he's going back in, and he's going back in, they're trying to kill him. This is essentially the same thing that Richard Nixon resigned over. What? This is amazing. The exact same thing that Richard Nixon did, and he resigned. Rather than get punished, he resigned. Nobody to this day has been held accountable. Y'all remember the Watergate, right? Most of y'all are old enough to know or remember the Watergate. Robert Mueller's special investigation. Robert Mueller was a high-profile attorney that ended up in Congress, or head of the FBI, I'm sorry. Robert Mueller's investigation, excuse me, was based upon information that was known to be false by those that perpetrated it. Did you hear me? This is documented proof. Robert Mueller's investigation was based upon information that was known to be false by those that perpetrated it. Its purpose was to enable Trump's political enemies to use the full resources of the U.S. government to dig up dirt that would hopefully result in the president's impeachment. In the end, the investigation could not demonstrate that Trump had colluded with Russia in any impeachable manner. This is crazy, y'all. Now, what does all this mean? How is all this connected to Ezra? Let's keep going. Congressional impeachment, y'all remember this, in December 2019. Nancy Pelosi's House of Representatives brought two formal charges of impeachment against the President Trump after conducting an infamously partisan investigation. After infamously partisan investigation. Republicans were not allowed the same liberties of questioning the witnesses as the Democrats, and sometimes were not even invited to meet with the witnesses at all. The two charges of impeachment were obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. Both charges rested on the fact that President Trump asked Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden's involvement in Burisma. That's why they attacked him. Because if he had been allowed to continue his investigation in Ukraine concerning Joe Biden and his son, Trump asked Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden's involvement in Burisma, a notoriously corrupt oil and gas company, despite numerous red flags. The media has given the whole affair, as it pertains to Biden's actions, a tepid pass. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic. Certain agencies throughout the government moved to close businesses across the country and implement a forced quarantine. This sparked the worst unemployment situation since the Great Depression. The rationale was to save lives. However, the classification of deaths as COVID-19 has been used as a weapon to destroy the Trump economy. This scare tactic worked because the news outlet only reported inflated COVID-19 deaths, not the fact that the total death rate remained in line with prior COVID-19 free years. COVID-19 free years that was no such pandemic. Now, the following chart summarizes the CDC's weekly death count through June in the U.S. for these 3 years. In 2018, these were the total deaths in the U.S. through June without counting New York City. In 2018, 1,108,251. In the same year, counting New York, there was another 22,667. In 2019, without New York City's grand total, there was 1,093,734. The same year, 2019, counting New York City deaths through the same month, 21,952. In 2020, without counting New York City's deaths total, 1,109,329. Same year, counting the deaths in New York City's total, in 2020, 28,383. Now, the first charts demonstrates the total deaths in the U.S. excluding New York City. There is no statistical difference between 2018 deaths and 2020 deaths, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is not what you would expect to see based on the unprecedented coverage of the pandemic and the incredible measures taken to flatten the curve. This is not to say that the disease is not real. It was real, but it does suggest that there is far more bark to this pandemic than there was bite. Deaths in New York City were higher in the first 6 months of 2020 due to the city's mandated acceptance of COVID-19 patients into assisted living centers, a practice of absolutely insanity. There can be little doubt from an objective observer that the politics of this pandemic have proven to be far more destructive than the sickness itself. Election fraud. As part of the COVID-19 economic stimulus package, Nancy Pelosi proposed giving states $4 billion to facilitate a transition to vote by mail. This was, of course, to avoid the spread of this desolating sickness. All facts to the contrary. Her proposal was openly opposed by Trump as a backdoor to election fraud. Many of the battleground states were determined by razor-thin margins. Voter fraud is a real risk. The primary risk for the lack of internal controls over voter registration lists. Due to recent lawsuits, many voter registration lists have been proven to contain thousands of deceased, dead voters, felons, and non-citizens. Did you hear that? This is how wicked. And I'm not, like I said, I ain't claiming one side to be better than the other. I think they're all wicked. But look at what they did. Now, if they do this among their own selves, what do you think you mean to them? Many voter registration lists have been proven to contain thousands of deceased voters, felons, now we're talking dead people, felons, and non-citizens. Nothing stops these ghost ballots from being used to skew results in battleground states. Indeed, in Pennsylvania, a key battleground state, one person voted by mail 7 times in the same election. These things were proven. Manufactured racial hatred. The media is constantly painting the president as a racist. I've been seeing it, I know you have too. The president once called MS-13 gang members animals and rapists for the vicious sexual and violent machete attacks on innocent people. The media twisted Trump's reference to MS-13 members to a general reference to all immigrants. Furthermore, engineered race riots are being coordinated and executed to maximize social unrest. People, what's happening in the U.S. right now? If you don't see the social unrest, you are deeper asleep than I thought. Open your eyes, take a look. Ezra is telling you, Ezra told you. One such riot erupted outside the White House, forcing the president to evacuate to his presidential bunker, which he was mocked in the media for doing. We are now seeing all the signs of national distress symbolized by the voice coming forth from the midst of the eagle. These consist of socially engineered chaos such as busloads of agitators arriving in chartered vehicles, mysterious pallets of bricks, and water being delivered at riot sites. What? Movements to defund the police and wildly biased accounts of it all from the mainstream media. Who is coordinating this social unrest? Ask yourself that question. I always say, if you want the right answer, you've got to ask the right questions. Who is coordinating this social unrest? Someone is working the billows, blowing life into the burning hatred that is raging in the hearts of the rising generation. Who is behind it? That's an excellent question. And the answer to this question is embedded within the identity of the feathers of Ezra's ego. Now, why did Ezra list of feathers start where it did? Why not start the list with Washington or Lincoln? In order to understand Ezra's reasoning, we must turn to a modern Ezra for clarification. In the April 1972 General Conference, Ezra Taft Benson, this is not the biblical Ezra, Ezra Taft Benson invited all members of the church to read a book titled No Dare Call It Conspiracy. It's worth reminding the reader that Ezra T. Benson served in President Eisenhower's cabinet while he was an ordained apostle for 8 years. He was therefore very familiar with Washington. The book he recommended speaks of the rise of a secret organization that has been the dominant force shaping policy in Washington since its creation. This is not new. This organization's name, get this, is the Council on Foreign Relations. And its founding members are shown in the image below. Note the second name in the series, Herbert Hoover. It just keeps getting better, y'all. Now, I put these pictures here so you can see who all the players are. Some of them are dead and gone, but they had a lot to do with what we're dealing with today, or what you guys in the U.S. are dealing with. Better get out of Babylon. These are the founders of the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the formal memberships of the Council on Foreign Relations is composed of hundreds of the most elite names in government, business, finance, media, and education. It has staffed the vast majority of key cabinet positions in every administration since its inception. Its members held up the government three-letter agencies as well. This pattern continued into the administration of President Trump. However, unlike every president in the list before him, Trump began to actively purge these people from their positions of power. Now you understand why they hate him so much. Now, I can't really say if Trump's intents or intentions are going to be beneficial for us. I have my suspicions otherwise. But this is going to play out, people. And there is nobody that can stop it. This was prophesied. It is going to happen. Trump's resistance has made him a terrible threat to this group's agenda and has resulted in numerous attempts to remove him from office that have been noted above. Still, most Americans have never heard of the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. Those that have and try to speak out about it are immediately debunked as quack, conspiracy theorists, and ridiculed. Yet, this group This group, it is at the heart of America's secret combinations. It is the head of the snake. Like I said, people, watch this several times and take your time, pause it, look up the scriptures, look up the words, get a good understanding. Something very detrimental is about to happen real soon. Shalom, people. Oh, and by the way, in case somebody don't know, the Sabbath is Wednesday. This is the 7th biblical month. I'm sorry. Maybe is this a 6th or 7th month? This is the 6th month, right? 6? All right, we're in the 6th biblical month. I have seen people that I am somewhat familiar with that are saying that we're in the 7th biblical month and that this is the month of the Day of Atonement. No, it's not. The Day of Atonement is in the 7th month. We are not in the 7th month. But Wednesday is the Sabbath. And since I'm already in the future, that's tomorrow for me. It's you come later. Shalom. I hope y'all have a good, prosperous day. I hope y'all enjoy your Sabbath. And for those of you who don't know, you do not fast on the Sabbath. You do not leave your dwelling. You don't go across town. You don't take trips. You don't go to no church. You do not leave your home. That day is not for you. It is for your Creator. Show him some respect. Shalom.